Hey, love the Notre Dame Nation. Mark Edwards here again. Excited to give you the weekly installment of Edwards Insight. Cotton Bowl only 2 weeks away. Jen asks, looking strictly at statistics, we should lose this game against Clemson. Knowing statistics don't win games, which positions are going to have to dominate in order to bring home a win? In any big game, and this kind of holds true throughout all of football, but specifically this game, the big boys up front really need to show up. Their defensive line, Clemson's defensive line, you got two All-Americans, pretty much consensus All-Americans. So our offensive line is going to have to play very, very well in order to keep Ian Book upright and to give him time to really attack one of their weaker parts, which is their defensive backfield. Defensively, once again, the guys up front are going to have to stop the run and going to have to get Lawrence off of the spot. They're going to have to put pressure on that young freshman quarterback. And so really both sides of the line is really, really going to be key. Frederick Anthony Benson asks, what are some of the weaknesses of the Clemson Tigers, even though they are 12-0? Knowing we schooled Syracuse and Clemson had some trouble with them, break down their weaknesses for us. I don't like to get into comparing scores because we struggled against Pitt and they dominated Pitt. So you can kind of throw those out the window a little bit. But that said, we got to attack their defensive backfield. We got these big, tall receivers that are explosive, can make plays, will be more. Will play over their defensive backs, and that's really where we have to attack things. Offensively, we got to attack their defensive backfield. Like I said, defensively, we got to attack their guys up front. We got to stop the running game. We got to get on their quarterback. Oscar Tapia asks, the talk is Clemson has elite talent. They will crush the Irish. I know the team says they don't listen or read all the bulletin board material, but being me a former player, I'm sure you heard some of the bulletin board material in my day. His question is, does the team use some of that noise as motivation or do they block it out? With social media being the lightning rod that it is, he believes it's hard not to use. What are my thoughts? I think it's on an individual-to-individual basis. Is that stuff brought up in the team room? Is it brought up by the coaches? Yes, it is. But some people take it a little more personally. Myself, I kind of laughed it off. I was never a big talker. I always was too busy worrying about the game and the game plan. And, there's guys that trash talk on the field as well. I was never big on that. I chose to use my energy during the plays instead of in between them. But the guys are aware of it. They know of it. It helps a little bit before the game, but once kickoff starts, you got to play football, and all that motivational pregame stuff or trash talking, bulletin board material goes out the window. You got to play on the field. Edison Tucker, if Coach Holtz was coaching this game, how would he prepare? It would be very differently than Brian Kelly because Coach Holtz really recruited a different type of athlete than Coach Kelly does. And not only that, but it's just a different style of football. Coach Holtz would line up these big boys up front and go right after them, run it right down their throat, and hey, stop us if you can. Whereas Brian Kelly recruits a different type of offensive lineman almost where, they're more athletic, they're pass blocking. We still can get after them a little bit in the running game, but for the most part, game plans aren't going to change a whole lot. At the end of the day, you have to take away what they do best, and you have to do what you do best. So whether that's Kelly, whether that's Holtz, that's not really going to change a whole lot. Tony LaRue would like to know, we hear major mixed opinions among fans concerning green jerseys, special non-standard uniforms, etc. What's your opinion and experience with respect to how players feel about the prospect of wearing them? Were the opinions vastly different among players when you played versus today's players? Is your opinion different now versus when you were a player? When I was a player, I felt that we should wear the green jerseys. Everybody who attends Notre Dame should wear the green jerseys or some variation of them one time. I was traditional. I don't want the names on the back. I don't like that. But today's athlete is a lot different. You look at what Oregon's doing with the different uniforms every single week, essentially. Today's athlete really likes that variation. They like the loudness of these uniforms, so to speak. But once again, they like, I'm a traditionalist, so I don't like the big screen at Notre Dame Stadium. I don't like the field turf at Notre Dame Stadium, but all these things are necessary for today's athlete in order to get those kids in there, in order to recruit them. It's a different mindset. It's a little bit of a me first type of attitude. But at the same time, Notre Dame does a pretty good job with the type of kids they bring in. But they still like the outlandish uniforms, a little bit of change a couple times a year. So it's good for recruiting. Let's talk Brandon Wimbush. Daryl Dale asks, we all know that Wimbush is a great athlete. Not saying at the quarterback position, but do you think this game would be a good game to dial up some plays with him to catch Clemson off guard? Brandon Wimbush is a tremendous athlete. A couple years ago, I was at the spring game the year before he started, and he was the most electrifying player on the field. That said, being electrifying from the quarterback position and being able to elude the pass rush and make plays with your feet from the quarterback position is a lot different than running pass routes as a receiver, than running a reverse as a receiver, or even running the football from the running back position. It's a different way of you got to read the blocks. It's a different way. You got to hit the holes. It's a different way of running the ball. Can we sneak him in for a couple special plays here and there? I think we can, but it would be more gimmick plays than it would be bread and butter plays. David Belisai asks, do you feel there's an SEC bias? Of course there's an SEC bias, but the reason there is an SEC bias is because it was kind of earned. If you look back, over the national champions over the past 15 years, I want to say there's probably 10 SEC national champions. I know there was 7 in a row at one point from 2006 to 2013, something like that, with Alabama, with 4 different SEC teams winning a national title: Florida, Alabama, Auburn, and LSU. So yeah, there is an SEC bias. The top of the SEC is been fantastic, specifically the last couple of years with Georgia and Alabama. The rest of the SEC is just human, can lose to anybody. So me living down in Jacksonville, Florida now, in SEC country, I get sick of hearing about it. John Pusack. Do the players reap rewards from the Goodyear Cotton Bowl? For example, iPads, clothes, etc. Absolutely, they do. Back when I was playing, when we were going to the Cotton Bowl and the Fiesta Bowl and Orange Bowl, there was an NCAA limit on the amount of gifts that you could get for the bowl game. It was like $600 worth of gifts. Granted, they would get special deals and things like that, so you would always get a lot of gear. Clothing, shoes, watches, rings. One of the best gifts that we got was when we went to the Orange Bowl, 95 season. We got these little antenna TVs that would pick up the UAF signals or whatever the heck it was back then, that we could watch TV on. And we thought that was the coolest thing ever. These guys nowadays, I'm sure that limit has gone way up. So they're getting a lot of great swag, probably a lot of great electronics as well. Megan Fitzpatrick asks, Mark, with a lot of talk this week about the upcoming draft, who do you see declaring and who do you see playing on Sunday? Also, with the new NCAA rule for basketball, undrafted players can return to school. Do you see that eventually becoming a reality in football, and what impact will that have? First of all, my thoughts on, well, obviously the seniors, they're all going. Um, uh, Coney's going to get drafted, within the first 3 rounds probably. And then obviously you got Tillery, Drew, all those guys are going to have their shot in the NFL. A couple of them are going to get drafted pretty high in the first couple of rounds. So really this question pertains more to the underclassmen, I believe, that may be declaring early. And my opinion is if you're not going to be a surefire first, second rounder, you should come back, whether you're a senior with a 5th year of eligibility or you're a junior, which really the only one that fits that criteria this year is Julian Love. He's going to be a mid to late first rounder, maybe early second rounder. So all these other guys with a year of eligibility, Boykin and guys like that, I believe should come back. But all these guys are going to have a chance to play on Sunday. You saw last year with St. Brown and Adams leaving with a year of eligibility left that neither one of them got drafted very high. I think Josh went undrafted and St. Brown went maybe 6th or 7th round, if at all. I don't recall. But Notre Dame and the people in the football office got those guys connected with NFL draft experts, personnel people from various NFL teams, and they all told them, like, look, you're going to go very late or not at all. And the agents these guys chose put different thoughts in their head. So Notre Dame was trying to get these guys to do the right thing and come back this year, but they followed their agent's advice. Now, both of them are playing a little bit. Josh has had some recent success, but they both would have benefited a lot more had they come back for their senior years. Now, new NCAA rule for basketball, undrafted and return to school. You start getting into some slippery slope right there, because if you get drafted late and you might not want to go to that team versus being a, undrafted guy, where do you draw the line there? Oh, I don't like where I got drafted, so now I'm going to go back. Can you make different rules for that? There's a lot of things to consider when that happens. It works a little bit better for basketball because there's so few players drafted, where there's a lot more in the NFL, 7 rounds versus 2 rounds. Is that probably going to happen in football? Probably at some point. But these guys, it takes a lot more physical development to be able to play in the NFL than it does to be able to play in the NBA, just due to the physicality of the sport. So is this going to be reality at some point in football as well as basketball? It very well could be, but I think it's a lot more complicated. And finally, and most importantly, Mark, what would be a bigger joy for you, to have won a national title at Notre Dame, or if you could go back and see your son win a title at Notre Dame in the future? Well, that's a kind of a no-brainer. I certainly would get a hell of a lot more joy out of seeing my son win a title at the University of Notre Dame, because really I did win one in '93, just nobody recognized it. So with that, I appreciate being able to share my insight with all the Love the Notre Dame members, and keep those questions coming for next week. Go Irish.